Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our service special Halloween greetings as we begin together. We offer a hello to our Unitarian Universalist Church of Sarasota and our Lakewood Ranch Unitarian Universalists, as well as our visitors and our guests. I'm the Reverend Doug Wadkins. I'm the interim senior minister, and I'm joined today by the Reverend Beth Miller, one of our associate ministers, as well as Robert Lischetti and Paul Lewis assisting with music, and Don Bren on piano. We, of course, continue to be greatly served by our technical crew, Doug Caldwell and Klaus Obermeit. I'll introduce our special guest in just a moment. But if you are a visitor, I hope that you will take a moment while you are on the internet to go to our homepage and click on the banner that is entitled Welcome Visitors. If you do that, it takes you to a page that'll give you a lot of helpful information. It will also give you the chance to sign our virtual guest book. If you do that, we will send you a link to our various events throughout the week. And so I hope that you will try some of the various other things besides Sunday morning worship to get to know us better. Also, we will send you our weekly newsletter, The Contact. So while you're there, sign up. We also will have coffee hour after the service today, and it is the same link that you use as part of the forum. So I hope that if you were able to do that, that you will join us after the service. A couple of things before we move to the prelude, or really one thing. We will be reopening in next month on the 14th, the second Sunday of went blank for a minute, of November. And so we will give you more information about the details around all of that in the next two contacts. So be sure to look about the news about joining us here in a couple of weeks on Sunday morning. We are very happy this morning to have Julie Faith Cornwall as our guest musician, our cellist today. She has been playing in various orchestras for 45 years. She's said to really emphasize that she loves the opportunity to play from the heart, and she loves being part of these experiences and houses of worship. So we are very pleased to have you here today, Julie. Bless you for playing with us this morning.
Thank you. I love simple gifts. Thank you for doing that this morning. Good morning, everyone. So as we kindle this flame, we honor and remember those who have passed into the mystery. Their brightness lives on in our vision. Their courage lives on in our commitments, and their love continues to bless the world through us. And now for our time of all ages, Catherine wasn't able to be with us today, so she asked me to introduce this. At Halloween every year, prior to having to close the church campus, we would have the children from religious education in at the beginning of the service in their Halloween costumes, and they would offer a parade and then exit to go and have a Halloween party in the RE wing. Today, we are going to have a virtual Halloween parade, but it doesn't just include children. It includes everyone who sent in a photo that Catherine has put together for our Halloween parade of congregation members. So sit back and enjoy our virtual Halloween parade. Well, that was fun. Thank you, Don, for the fun music with it. And now let's join together with our masked choir in hymn number 323, Break Not the Circle. time for centering is from Autumn Chant by Edna St. Vincent Millay. And after we share these words with you and invite you to join us in the responsive part of that, which are the parts that Doug will say, please join us for a time of silence followed by singing together, Spirit of Life. Now the autumn shudders in the rose's root. Far and wide the ladders lean among the fruit.
Now the autumn clambers up the trellised frame, and the rose remembers the dust from which it came.
Brighter than the blossom on the rose's bough sits the wizened orange, bitter berry now.
Beauty never slumbers, all is in her name, but the rose remembers the dust from which it came.
Our reading this morning is an excerpt from Dear Men and Women by John Hall Wheelock. In the quiet before the cock crow, when the cricket mandolin falters, when the light of the past falling from the high stars yet haunts the earth and the east quickens, I think of those I love. Dear men and women, no longer with us. And not in grief or regret merely, but rather with love that is almost joy. I think of them of whom I am part, as they of me, and through whom I am made more wholly one with the pain and the glory, the heartbreak at the heart of things. I have learned it from them at last, whom am now grown old, a happy man, that the nature of things is tragic and meaningful beyond words, that to have lived, even if once only, once and no more, will have been, oh, how truly worth it. Dear eyes of delight, dear youthful tresses, foreheads furrowed with age, dear hands of love and care, lying awake at dawn, I remember them. With a love that is almost joy, I remember them, lost and all mine forever.
Thank you, Beth. So today is the day of All Hallows Eve, and it is a time that borrows freely from other traditions. It certainly takes much of its inspiration from the Celtic tradition of Samhain. Samhain means literally summer's end, and it is the celebration of the end of harvest and the start of the colder half of the year. And many of its practitioners also believe it is the beginning of a spiritual new year. In the pagan and earth-centered traditions, the calendar is divided into quarters by the solstices and the equinox. And the importance also is placed on what they call the cross quarter days, the days that fall halfway between each solstice and equinox. Samhain falls halfway between the autumn equinox, Mabon, and the winter solstice, the Yule. In the northern hemisphere, many pagans celebrate Samhain from the sundown of October 31st through November 1st, and others hold their celebrations on the nearest weekend or the full moon or new moon closest to this time. And with the growth and spread of Christianity as the dominant religion throughout Europe, Samhain time took on Christian names and guises, like All Saints' Day or All Hallows on November 1st, commemorated Christian saints and martyrs. And All Souls' Day on November 2nd was a remembrance of all souls of the dead. And with the coming of the Christian Spaniards to Mexico, the indigenous customs honoring the dead at this time of the year were mixed with Roman Catholicism, and it gave birth to La Días de los Muertos. And so Samhain and Los Días de los Muertos share an ancient spiritual practice of remembering and paying respect to the dead, as do many religious holidays honored in so many traditions. Somehow they believe that there are times in the year where that separation is less intense and clear. And so too, the line that separates the past and the present. It is a dreamier time, a time when, in many traditions, we believe that in some way, those that came before may be with us again. We know that this time of year that we've come to call Halloween borrows creatively from all of this and more. It is a time when we think of a season of reveling in the silly, spooky, and the genuinely scary. It is a time of ghosts and goblins and politically incorrect witches. So let's also look at perhaps some of the wisdom that is in the midst of that tradition, perhaps from unexpected sources. Ghost stories, for instance, are very old and have an extremely rich tradition. Ghosts haunt forests, hills, caves, and certainly houses. But haunted comes from an old German word which made its way to Old French, and both of them are related to the root of the word for home. And what they originally meant to haunt was to frequent, and had quite a neutral sense. Even in our own tradition, we have played with the word haunted. We've had two curriculums, the haunting house and the haunting church. One is for younger folk to explore the ways in which the concept and the space we call home is essential to our own spirituality. And for the adults in the haunting church to explore their own religious heritage, especially the parts of their heritage that may feel for them still a place of woundedness, and seek to be in better relationship with their past. So haunted has a very rich tradition with layers of how it may be understood. As I was thinking about how exactly I wanted to explore this Halloween, I recalled one of my favorite ghost stories, the 2001 film The Others by the Spanish-Chilean director-screenwriter Alejandro Amenabar. It takes place in 1945 in Jersey, the Channel Islands, not in New Jersey, and the widow Grace Stewart lives in a lonely old house with her daughters Anne and Nicholas. Grace has had a rough time. She lost her husband Charles in World War II, and both of her children are photosensitive, and so she keeps the curtains and the doors closed to protect them against the sunlight. She has raised them with very strict discipline and very religious principles. And it's overwhelming. So one day, when three strangers appear, a housekeeper, Mrs. Bertha Mills, a mute maid, Lydia, and a gardener named Edmund Tuttle, they just appear at her door and ask for a job. She thinks it is a godsend. But out of the blue, over the next few days, mysterious things begin to happen in the mansion. And Anne, the daughter, claims that she sees people and that there is a boy named Victor that is visiting them. Well, let's see a scene from this film. In this scene, Grace, played by Nicole Kidman, has had a series of horrible, disturbing experiences of things moving and voices, and her daughter has drawn a picture of the others that she has seen in the house. And in this scene, Grace is looking through old photos in search for the possibility that perhaps one of them would show a former resident, the ghost that is visiting them. And while she is looking at these photos, the housekeeper comes in to talk with her. Let's see a clip from The Others.
Ma'am.
Yes.
They've searched everywhere, ma'am. There's no one.
I see. Mrs. Mills,
Yes, ma'am.
do you have any idea what this might be?
Oh, it is a photograph album, ma'am.
No, but look, they're all asleep.
They're not asleep, ma'am. They're dead. It is a book of the dead. In the last century, I believe they used to take photographs of the dead in the hopes that their souls would go on living through the portraits.
They're even group portraits. And children. Oh, it's macabre. How could these people be so superstitious?
Grief over the death of a loved one can lead people to do the strangest things.
I'm not going to spoil very much about what happens in the film because it would be a good Halloween watch. But the reason that I used it as an example is that it is literally a ghost story. There are actual ghosts involved. But mostly it is also the way that almost every character in the film is haunted by their past and trying to decide how to move forward, sometimes with very heavy burdens. So what might we learn from ghost stories? And when I talk about ghosts in this instance, I'm talking about them both as a sort of literary device, but also as a sort of metaphor for the things that visit us or haunt us. Well, often in these stories, what we do in the past can come back to haunt us, but even more so if we are not willing to attend to what we have done, to admit at least to ourselves what is true about our past. And when we have made a mistake, to seek to make it right if we can. Now, ghosts, when they're from the past, often come to us bearing some truth or some message, at least in the stories about them. And when in doubt, it is important, these stories tell us, to give those ghosts our respect. But when it is possible, to befriend them. The more that we are slow to assume the worst, the more that we are likely to know that which is haunting us for what it is. Now, it's also true that ghosts can have their own agendas, and when they do, it is best to give them gentle space. Sometimes we are remembering people in our lives who carried very difficult things in their own life. Our job is not to carry their burdens for them, but to give them space still to be with us and receive our connection and our love as best we can. Often we are haunted, but it may be inviting us to something very old, something that is at the core of who we are. Very often, whatever it is that is coming to us, whether it is a person or a memory, calls us to be in truer relationship with something that is important in our lives. To be open to the possibility that someone from our past appearing in our thoughts may be asking something of us. And in the classic literature, it is perhaps to atone for the past. And I'm always reminded, especially by the High Holy Days, the idea that atonement really is to seek a sense of wholeness and reconnection to what is most meaningful in our lives, instead of living in brokenness or separation. Some of the time, that which is visiting us just appears because we may never know, but we may even regard a visit in our imagination, or for that matter, someone who comes to us physically, as an opportunity as well. When the possibility comes to us, how will we greet it? So, beyond just a ghost story, what might a haunting experience look like in a typical lived life? When I was in middle school, our youth group did a service project of assisting a Big Brothers and Big Sisters Halloween carnival. They were offering a safe space for children in the area to be able to trick or treat. We divided into smaller groups at the church and distributed ourselves to ride to the community center in cars. And each of the cars had 2 adults, because adult chaperones were as needed as we young worker bees as well. And in the back seat, 3 of us, all young teenagers, happily and excitedly chatted and laughed. But then we realized that we were no longer moving in the car, and we were not at the community center yet. It looked like we were actually at a full stop at an intersection, at a stop sign. Fortunately, no one was behind us, but we were sitting there. And someone in the front seat had turned up the radio, and an artist familiar to us all, Karen Carpenter, was the voice we heard. Well, we youngins in the back seat exchanged baleful glances with each other because Karen Carpenter did not meet our coolness factor at all. And of course, I would never confess to them that the very first album I bought with my own money was the Carpenters' singles album. It was strange just sitting there, and something told us to be quiet as her voice intoned a tune that we all knew. Why do birds suddenly appear every time you are near? As that song drifted, for the first time, we realized that the young man in the front seat, a member of the young adult group, was crying. And the woman sitting next to her had been giving him a little bit of time while he collected himself before checking in on him. And finally, she said, "Are you okay?" And you could tell that he was embarrassed by his emotional state. And he said, "That was my sister's favorite song." And even though she has been dead for 5 years, dying in a car accident, for whatever reason tonight when that song came on, it felt like she was sitting right here next to me. It felt so real to have her here. And he began to cry again. And even we 3 middle schoolers from the back seat, even in our limited experience, knew that this was an important moment to him and needed some sort of reverence. To my still forming 13-year-old self, I remember thinking that this is what happens when you really love someone and are missing them. How out of the blue, when you are not expecting it, something can remind you of them and make you stop what you are doing and hold them in your thoughts. I felt it was very important, and to this day, I remember that moment so clearly. And I even recall on that day, it was not lost on me, that on that Halloween night, it was as if the ghost of her sister's memory had visited him in that moment. For a moment, I invite you, in a sort of quiet reflection, to think if there are people in your life that you are thinking of now. And even if you're not, maybe with a little bit of quiet, if there are people or memories that will come to you. Perhaps there is someone on your mind today, or has been in the last few days. Perhaps it is someone who has departed, but it could be a friend or a family member, someone very much alive that you just have not seen recently. When you think about them, what feelings or thoughts come to mind? Lean more into the memory or experience if you can. Bring the memory of them in whatever way you can vividly to mind. What if you were to imagine this person as a sort of messenger? What might possibly their appearance to you now mean? If you thought of them as a teacher, what lesson might they be offering? What common thread of memory might be similar to something that is happening in your life now? I invite you for just a couple of minutes of quiet to see who comes to you, what in the deeper sense haunts you right now, and what it might be saying to you about life. If nothing else, just for a couple of moments, hold their presence as a sort of gift. Let's be quiet together. I'll bring you out of the silence in a couple of moments. You don't have to fully let go of that thought. As a matter of fact, if you want, you can bring it more fully into our time together of offering. As we move into that time, may we remember all of the gifts in our life, and always think about what every gift, what every relationship asks of us, and how we can best live into it. We invite another gift of music from Julie, and I'm reminded that the cello that she plays on comes from 1740 and has probably had many amazing spirits that were part of playing it. So it is perfect that it offers a gift of music to us now. Thank you, Julie. Just a quick parting thought as we move in just a moment to our closing hymn. In the silence, what I invited you to do is sometimes actually called a spiritual practice of befriending. It is considered a spiritual practice because it seeks to connect us more deeply to whatever presents itself to us in life. And it asks us, before we overwhelmingly place a judgment on something as good or bad, helpful or unhelpful, meaningless or profound, to try to be with it first with an open mind and a heart. To see that even very ordinary moments are potential teachers and bringers of truth. That even a meal that is not prepared perfectly may still nourish us. It stands in juxtaposition to the consumeristic approach that our culture so often considers. To realize that a story or a film may still speak to us despite, maybe because of its imperfections. And that people in our lives, even sometimes when they're acting at their worst, still may offer us a gift of knowing something more deeply that we need to know, if we allow ourselves to be open to it. So, as we move into our closing hymn, I invite us all to think about the ways that our life may be offering us gifts and how to receive them better. Will you join us in number 336, All My Memories of Love? Lee Hubert offers these words as we close. Lighting a candle is somewhat like the beginning of life. And if that is true, then perhaps extinguishing a candle is like the ending of life. But death may not be the end of us. We live on in the memories of friends and loved ones. The influences we possessed in life work on, moving persons or causes forward. Let us not forget that most candles have more than one life, and so, perhaps, may we. We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of wisdom old and new, not the fire of our commitment to all that matters in our life, not the warmth of love. These remain until we gather in this place again. Thank you for joining us today. I hope you have a very safe and wonderful Halloween, and we look forward to you joining us here again next Sunday.